Live. All right. We are in the studio. Team Early as Fuck podcast. We have Brigid here of Gravel Road Farm. Brigid,
Hi.
it's good to have you in the studio. It's good to see you again. How did you weather the storm this weekend? I saw your post about farmers market and the weather, beautiful fall weather we had.
Oh, actually, it was one of those things on Friday where you're like, I don't want to go to the market tomorrow because it's going to be terrible and there's going to be no customers and we're going to be the only people there because everyone else there is only like half committed to being farmers. And here we are like 100% committed. And sure enough, I show up and I'm like the only one there. And then a couple minutes later, another person shows up and another person. So there was about 4 vendors there altogether. And then a lot of customers, a lot of my really, really great customers, they are like checking my Facebook, see if I'm going to be there. And then they show up too. So it was actually really worth my while. I mean, no, it wasn't like a huge, great market. It wasn't a ton of customers. There was a lot of empty space, but it was totally fine because I felt like you don't know what the last month of market's going to be like, so you got to take advantage of anything that you can marginally feel like you can sell a little bit. You never know who's going to be there and who might stop by and say, oh, I want all of this, you know.
Yep.
So, but yeah, we did great. Because this next Saturday looks pretty dismal, actually, like snow, 35 degrees. So I don't know. That one might be a no-go. We'll see.
Yay, Wisconsin farmers markets. Well, I'm glad you had you represented and you had a bit of a showing. That's awesome. With how big is Wapaka?
Like 6,000 people.
Okay. And how many other full-time farmers hit up or represent at the market?
Like vegetable farmers?
Sure.
0.
Nice.
We're the only full-time vegetable farmers, but there are a lot of part-time vegetable farmers who are serious about their business. There are full-time bakers. There are full-time meat farmers, whatnot. So it's not necessarily exclusive to saying a farmer's market has to be this way. It's fine.
Yeah.
There is a hmong farmer that sets up next to us probably 3rd week of June all the way till as long as they can. And they're definitely full-time farmers.
Mm-hmm.
But they're from out of town. So they're not necessarily always there. But I know they have other markets too. So, but we're exclusive to Wapaka. If the Lee family didn't come and set up, I mean, that market would be really empty. So I'm not slighting them or anything. They bring mountains and mountains of beets and carrots and things that we don't bring. So it works out.
Awesome. I like it. And where do you want to start? Do we want to start with why Wapaka or why farming? What's your
Well, that it's totally related, I guess, but let's hit the why Wapaka first, because that story is easy to tell because I've only told it like a billion times.
There you go.
Because everybody wants to know, what are you doing here? And
I heard it at the Seasonal and Fun workshop we had at Farm Shed with Gravel Road and Liberation. Let's start there. So the workshop series is how to meal prep seasonally. What does that look like? Having a conversation with our farmers, and it's kind of my version with obviously a ton of help from local farmers of what does it look like to do the box meal preps, the Blue Aprons or the Hello Freshes, or there's 20 different fitness versions of this. But what does it look like when it's done locally with sustainable food systems in mind that are thinking about the environment, local economies, families, those kind of things? So for you, kind of what were your ideas going into it? What did you take away from it? That kind of thing.
Yeah. Going into the workshop.
Yes.
I was skeptical. I'll say that because I've never done this before. Don't really know how this is gonna go. Really wasn't sure if the recipes that I had in my mind were too much or too little, or if people would be, able to do them and all that. And So that's how I went into it. I went into it like, I really want to try this because I think this is a great idea. Telling all my friends at work, saying, I'm going to go do that. I can't go to that meeting because I'm going to go do this really interesting thing at Farm Shed with this people who maybe, who aren't really into the scene, or people I don't even know, and I don't even know who's going to be there. It's going to be really interesting. And then it turned out okay, I think. We cooked for a long time.
We did cook for a long time.
We cooked a lot of stuff.
Cooked a lot of food.
I was kind of thinking, I want to give them 3 recipes that they can take home and make. So some of them were easier than others, but there wasn't a lot of like added stuff in. Maybe there was butter, salt, and pepper. But most of that stuff was just like dishes just made of vegetables. So I was really proud of all those recipes that we came up with too.
Yeah, it was amazing. For as a coach, watching you, like you said, that was the first time doing something like that, coach other people on how to cook, and most of them have no experience in the kitchen, meal prepping, cooking. And that was another reason for the series is, yes, we only sell 6 tickets per workshop, so the amount of people we're getting hands-on experience with is limited. But with the video portion, once we edit it and release that, we're hoping we can affect more people. But getting these people in that don't cook, that are afraid of cooking, getting them in front of someone like yourself who's grown the food, you work with the land, you very comfortable cooking in the kitchen. You've blown my mind with the rutabaga noodles.
Yeah,
like I'm a believer, huge fan of rutabaga noodles. But having their minds blown by your coaching, your cooking coaching was super cool to see. So well done.
Yeah, I think they felt pretty good about it. I think they were really blown away by the rutabaga noodles.
Everybody was blown away.
I know. And you know what? It's not that hard to find what to make out of stuff. You just have to practice it a lot, and then you can find out these cool things it just pops up because of the algorithms on your social media know what you like, and here all this stuff just is automatically being fed to you.
Damn you, Google.
Yes. But, there are chefs all over the country and all over the world who are putting things on YouTube now, and it's happening so fast. There's so much information out there. You can access so many different things and watch people cook in their own countries, in their own, with simple ingredients and everything. There's like a grandma in Mexico now. Her granddaughter or daughter films her with this authentic, really, really amazing recipes that she's making just out of just really simple stuff. It's mind-blowing.
Really?
Yeah. Mm. I'll have to share it to you.
Yeah, I was going to say, send me the link and I'll make sure I get that in there as well. Speaking of daughters, how was her trip? Because that was...
She's going next summer. She's not going yet. So
okay.
Yes, that's one tiny piece of this whole, this whole life that we've created, my husband and I together. So we can touch on that too. I mean, if you just think about, so why did we come to Waupaca?
Yes, let's
get to that story. So I was born in 1974. 1972, my parents got married. And right around that time, they're older. They were 38 at the time when they got married. And my dad grew up in Waupaca. He was born in Waupaca. He was one of 13 children. He was born in 1933. And they were very, very poor. They lived on Pine Street, which is right by the foundry, and a tiny house. And so as soon as a child was able to leave, they did. They joined the military and whatnot. So many of my dad's siblings left. Some stayed in the general area, but a lot of them moved all over the country. My dad's life was, I'm sure, very interesting. I don't know a lot about his life before we came. But he and my mom spent some time in Waupaca visiting and doing all the things that you do, family and whatnot. My grandmother still lived in Waupaca, so we would visit her. But my dad had a buddy, and the buddy wanted to move to the country. So he bought a farm, and he, 80 acres or something like that. And then there was this 40 that wasn't connected, but the same person was selling it, and called up my dad and said, hey, you got to buy this 40. And then you could have a little vacation home or a little hunting shack or something, and then we can hang out, because I'll be here and you'll be here. It's in the same little quad area there. So my parents bought the 40 acres. My mother, of course, being very prudent, so yes, that'll be a great way to save money. Not very expensive because there's no electricity. It's not developed. There's no well, nothing. And it's a lot of sand. It's very sandy. So there was only like 20 acres of tillable land. So most farmers didn't even want it. But beautiful, beautiful piece of property, has woods and this beautiful 20-acre spring-fed pond lake thing, and all these old trees, that have been, nothing's happened to them for a long time. So they're just totally natural, growing mixture of, an old apple tree and a birch and huge pine trees and everything. So it's very diverse. But so they bought it in 1972 for something like $12,000 for 40 acres. That's how much it cost. And that's not like super expensive or cheap or anything. So then they didn't do anything with it, but rented it out to the neighbor who made hay on it. So then fast forward about 40 years, and here my husband and I are 30 some years old. And my husband is farming in Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That's where he's from. And we met in Ashland, Wisconsin at college.
Nice.
So this is sort of connected to like why farming then. So the story is, we met in college, 18 years old, as freshmen, and talked a lot about what we would want to do in the future and what kind of life we would want to have. Like we both want to live somewhere we can be outside a lot and work with our hands and all that. And so after we graduated from college, and my husband got a degree in construction management from another university, and we moved to Pittsburgh, and he began his work as a construction manager. And I got a job doing whatever I could there to fit my sensibilities, including working at the zoo for a couple of years. But he got really tired of that. And then and kind of around the same time, we started having our children. And I decided to stay home because I liked that better than leaving them in somebody else's care. I kind of enjoy this piece of being there at home. And that then is tied into, then immediately I became immersed in like cooking because I have all this time. So then, of course, we're gardening. And right around, he's getting tired of this office job where he's like looking out the window at the birds and the creek that flows right next to his window. And he's not working with his hands. He's like making spreadsheets and phone calls. It's green building, so he's doing all this stuff that's righteous, but a lot of it is just paperwork. And so then we decide, okay, well, you're going to find something different to do. And he's calling around to farmers. And then there's this really gigantic organic farm in Pittsburgh called Kretschmann Farm. And they have a CSA, a 1,200 member CSA, because it's a city. They're serving a city. Yep. It's a giant CSA. And they've been doing it since the 80s, late 80s, when CSA first started. So really good at what they're doing. He becomes their farm manager, so he learns everything on the farm. He works there for 6 years, everything from packing the boxes, weeding, delivering the boxes all in the city, and then managing the farm when the owners wanted to go away. So 6 years. At the end of 6 years, we decided to start our own farm. But we were looking around in Pittsburgh thinking, let's have a place there, because that's where all our friends are. That's where all of his family is. We really kind of love it there. Pittsburgh's a beautiful city. And then you go to look at real estate and you're like, I can't afford any of these farms because of fracking. You know what fracking is? I kind of touched on that at the dinner. This is a way to get gas out of the earth, and you shoot this sand and water mixture and other chemicals, explosive chemicals, into the soil, and you light it up and you explode the soil, the rock. And it releases more gas that way because the gas is trapped in tiny little sections. And then they harvest the gas. And the problem was that if you didn't want people to come to your farm or to come on your land and frack, then you needed to own the mineral rights. And that adds a whole, doubles the price of a farm, say, to buy 40 acres. So if you didn't want those rights, if you said, well, I need a cheaper place, then you were at risk of potentially someone coming to your farm and either, fracking it from another space nearby, because the fracking can come at an angle and go deep under the soil and laterally. So then we were we didn't throw up our hands. We were just like, well, we don't know what to do about this. Maybe something will come along. What if this happened? We searched all different options. And I mean, even the person who was running the farm was thinking like that Ross would stay there for a while and maybe there could be an work to own it. But in the end, we were at a person's farm, a friend's farm, and we were telling them about the 40 acres that we kind of that my parents owned in Wisconsin. And then they were like, well, why are you here? If you have 40 acres in Wisconsin, you can just farm that. Well, that's a great idea. So then we visited in 2012. We visited the 40 acres. That summer, my parents had we had a conversation that went kind of like this. What are you going to do with that 40 acres, Mom? Oh, well, what? Do you want it? Because you can have it, and yeah, we'll pay the taxes and all of that. That's basically all there would be to do right now. We went there. We went there for a week in the summer. Like we would always go visit in Wapaka from Pittsburgh. We'd drive there with our kids and go kayaking on the Crystal River and, eat ice cream at the rural store and go to the Red Mill and go tubing and do all those really amazing things that Wapaka has, all those outdoorsy things, and just having a really great time. But then we take a day, leave the kids with Grandma and Grandpa, and we go to the farm and we look at it and we're like, where could we put a little house? Maybe we could move here. And then our neighbor comes out. Our neighbor that we have now comes out and says, hi, my name is Fred. I like to watch over this place. I want to make sure nobody's, messing around here or dumping stuff or doing anything they shouldn't be doing. And I introduced myself as Brigid. My parents owned this, and I'm going to be taking it over, and we might be visiting here. Or what we'd really like to do is have our own farm, and thinking about maybe putting a yurt here and whatnot. And he's like, well, you wouldn't have to do that because I own this house next door, and I will sell that to you, and then you can live there. Right across from the 40 acres that we owned, there was a house. Like, what are the chances? I mean, seriously. So, like, that was the clincher, that moment when this neighbor offered to sell us that house. That was the point where we said, well, I guess we should just do this because, how many things are going to line up like that ever again for anyone? So, we didn't know anybody in Wapaka. We just packed up all of our stuff. We sold our house in Pittsburgh. We told goodbye to everybody, and we just moved there. And then in April of 2013, we, bought a tractor and started tilling up the soil. And it was pasture. It was just alfalfa and hay and stuff. So we tilled that up. We looked at the soil maps and knew what kind of soil we were in and where we should be tilling up for vegetables and everything. And that first year was great. It was amazing. But that's kind of how it happened. Mm-hmm. But my husband and I both, I grew up loving dirt. As a 2-year-old, 3-year-old, making mud pie, playing in the ditches, in the suburbs of Chicago where I grew up. There was plenty of nature because of where we lived exactly. My parents had a 1/4 acre. They had a huge garden. We had chickens and ducks and bees and grapevines, and my parents made a lot of food, and it was just in my life. So it was not that big of a stretch for me to say, like, I want to live outside and I want to work outside with animals and I want to be in this kind of way. So, and my husband, maybe a little bit more, that he, like a lot of people, are kind of a little bit like unsure. What do I want to do? But then your life starts going in a direction and you just make choices along the way and then you end up where you are. So.
I like it.
That's the short version.
The short version.
It was just not that short.
So you kind of hinted at 2 years old, loving dirt. What are some of the memories you can look back on that kind of like I need to get into gardening or farming, or what were some of those things that food?
I mean, I know not every kid loves animals, but a lot of kids do, and that was definitely true for me. So I think a lot of my interest in farming was with animals. Like, I want to be an animal farmer. We had a lot of rabbits growing up and ducks. And I'm not sure if we butchered them and ate them or not, but I know that they were always there. There were a lot of pets, too, coming in and out of our house. But I think the the vegetable farming just happened because of the choices you make. Obviously, vegetable farming is a little bit easier in some ways than animal farming. So we have some of each, of course, on our farm. We have sheep, and then we have chickens, and we've tried other animals too. But the interest, the memories I have memories just of being in the garden and picking peas with my mom, and eating them right off the vine, snap peas or shell peas. And I remember eating a lot of tomatoes right off the vine. I remember eating a lot of broccoli, like in the garden, standing there, just picking off broccoli and eating it. And there was always vegetables on our dining room table. My mother always created dinners for us. I mean, sure, there was a lot of dinners that you just make up quick, but there was a lot of sit-down dinners, full dinners with a protein and starches, and my parents' garden was probably like 50 by 70, so pretty big. It has rhubarb and asparagus, and I mean all those things. So I do also distinctly remember having a plot of my own at one time. I was probably 12 or something like that, of sunflowers. So I planted the sunflowers very carefully, and weeded them like a 10-foot row, not very big, but and then they grew and grew and grew. Of course, my parents had a very fertile soil there because it was a lot of compost, a lot of concentrated nitrogen from a lot of waste, a lot of yard waste and things. But I have a picture, I think, in my memory of me standing in front of these sunflowers, and they're like, 12 feet tall, big, huge mammoth heads, like dipping over, and I'm here really proud, like standing in front of them. I don't know. I think it just being outside and planting plants and those things just came naturally to me. Was never foreign. Always a concept in there. However that works. Like a lot of people have things that come naturally to them, and they've been doing it since they were a kid. Like Tiger Woods, been golfing since he was 3. So farming's the same for me.
Nice. Talking about so I want to pick your brain a little when it comes to gardening for people as just something to do in life, a skill, and how you look at farming. Kind of what do you think most people would gain from growing their food, and what have you gained from this whole kind of endeavor?
I think people get really into it when they do it. I think it sort of is like either you do it all the way or none of the way. Like if you want to be successful, if you want to have the food in the end, you really have to be dedicated to it. And I think us as farmers, I feel like we have the ability, because we're doing this full time, to do a lot of this for people, to grow a lot of this food. Because a lot of people just don't have time. They'll get to the end of July and they'll be like, well, I had to go on vacation and then I got tired and then there was too many weeds and whatnot. So I think that a lot of people could be successful if they really wanted to put in a lot of more time into their garden. But I don't know, I think that's where farmers come in. The same, like you're not your own dentist. So why not pay somebody else to be your farmer? Mm-hmm. And then you can have great food and you can still have all that time to do all those other things that you want to do.
Yeah.
I don't know. My kids have all different degrees of interest in doing this. Like I could foresee 2 of them not having a garden at all when they grow up. And then one of them maybe taking over the farm. So like, I don't think I could give a piece of advice that would make anybody say, oh yeah, I should probably do that. Mm-hmm. I think you either are going to do it or you're not.
Gotcha. I like it. So what you're saying is, just for people listening too, is kind of like, I think it was kind of your coaching philosophy too at the workshop. It was like, hey, you're going to make mistakes. That's part of it. But just do it. It was kind of like, the thing at your workshop, and kind of what I think what you're saying now is, just sign up for a CSA, talk to your farmer, or, do that and start a garden. Fail along the way, try, get your hands dirty, see what happens. So for yourself, what have been and I definitely want to touch on, family, children, farm her, being a mom, that kind of thing. But what have been your biggest difficulties? Maybe, you mentioned time for a lot of people. From a time standpoint, just like maybe like mental or physical limitations. Like, what has been your biggest obstacles or windmills in this farming endeavor?
That's a great question. I think me really having a lot of this passion and desire to be a farmer and start the farm. But for 8 years, I stayed at home and cared for these babies. And so then jumping into the farming and still not being the full-time person, because immediately when I got to Wapaka, I looked for a job so that we could have some income. And so never have I been able to be a full-time farmer, which to me is a symptom of how our culture works. If I wasn't so separated from anybody else I knew, then maybe I wouldn't have to feel like I had to be with my children. Like if I had a grandmother or some auntie or something nearby that would have helped me raise my children, maybe I could have spent more time working or doing farming or something like that. Whereas I was, curating these human beings, my husband was developing and learning all these farming skills. So for him to jump into having our own farm business was, plenty of challenges there. But he was already had this 6 years of knowledge where I had an inkling of what this might be like, I mean, it works out great because I have this passion and that helps fuel, his logic and his sensibilities. And, we're a good partnership. But I think that was one of my biggest things that held me back was the inability to have answers for anything. And a lot of it has been make it up. So so this is our 7th year farming, our 7th season. And 2 or 3 years ago, so I guess 3 years ago, I started flower farming. And that was me learning everything. I started learning how other flower farmers were doing it and what size to do, what flowers to do, how to arrange them, like the whole shebang. I learned by watching YouTube, by joining Facebook groups, by having conversations with people, by taking a course in Madison, a 2-day flower farming course. So that was really like overcoming those challenges of not knowing anything to like learning it all until now I feel like I could teach someone else how to do it, for doing it for 3 years. Anyway, other challenges I've had, sometimes I physically am challenged. I would say I don't have as much endurance as my husband does for physical labor. But I compensate it by doing other things that the farm needs done. Farming is not necessarily 100% growing. Obviously, if you want to be successful in any business, you have to be selling all the time, selling yourself, especially if you're a small farmer. That's what people want. They want to buy your story. They want to buy into this beautiful, idyllic, young white couple with these blonde children, and they're doing this really hard thing, and I want to buy vegetables from them, which is to my advantage and whatnot. So I'm never complaining about that. But the marketing part of it was not hard for me. It came naturally to me. But I think in our partnership, in our mind, that the marketing was not, it's not work. Like growing the food is the work, and the marketing piece is extra. Mm-hmm. That's like, extra stuff you do if you have time. So developing a website. I did all of our website, multiple websites I've done, all of our marketing emails, talking to people and writing things on our social media, taking all of our pictures, all of those things. That's a certain type of marketing. And then I would go to the chamber events. So our Chamber of Commerce would have all these morning mixers, and then they have these evening mixers, and like going to those people and selling myself constantly to people, saying, hi, my name is Brigid. I grow organic vegetables. Would you like to buy them? Here's my card. Like that stuff is really, really draining and takes a lot of work, but you have to do it if you're you have to find ways to market yourself. You don't necessarily have to do those exact things, but you must be selling your stuff all the time. So there are some challenges. So how to sell your stuff. Growing, easy. Selling, hard.
I like it. Do you want to touch on some things I want to ask about? So originally, the term farm her came to my attention with Katrina having her on the podcast. Or do you want to touch on leadership / parenting? Which choose your own adventure. We're gonna get to both of them.
Well, we could talk about farm her. I'd prefer not to be called a farm her. I'd prefer to be just called a farmer. And that anybody of any sex or gender or orientation can be called a farmer. And it's not necessarily farmers and farm hers. Once you create the farm her, then you're saying you're different from these other people who are farmers. So it's complicated. It's nuance. Because obviously women in leadership roles can make a big difference. And if you're going to give them this platform of saying farm hers, more people might pay attention. And then they get a little boost. So I could see both sides of the coin. But I also know that I've had many discussions like this with people about when you see a picture of a farmer, it's always a man in a straw hat, whatever. So using language every day to say something different, I guess, would be great, in my opinion. I don't know. I don't know. I feel a little bit like a fraud sometimes. Am I really a farmer or not? I'm not sure, because it doesn't feel real, too, that I'm actually doing this. Because of the fact that I don't do as much of the actual, planting or planning of the vegetable crops, then it's sort of like I'm doing all this other work that's not really farming. It's salespeople. So am I in sales or am I in vegetables? I'm not sure. Which field am I in, I guess, is the joke.
I like it. And, there's really no right or wrong, because it's what you were talking about is each farm is different. Each partnership or cooperative is different. It's just people finding out what systems work for them. And a big reason for this in my world, like gym, fitness, health, wellness, that kind of thing, it goes in cycles where I have to not constantly, but there'll be definitely an influx of there's the super crazy sport dad that I have to have a talking to, like your child's 10. Let them have fun. They've been in school for 8 hours. They have sports. Now when they're here at the gym, let me do my job. Been doing it for a long time. Good at it. And I want your child to have fun with this. You're forcing them to come here. Don't breathe down their neck the whole time they're here. And don't expect a 10-year-old to train like a professional athlete. It's like you're going to burn them out. So there's that conversation that I have to have. That'll be coming up. It'll be the winter, the downtime, where a lot of parents are like, my child needs this next level. It's like, they're 10. Calm down. Let them have fun. Let them enjoy life. And then there's the other conversation I have to have with some crazy dads and husbands where they get super intimidated that their wife is stronger and faster, quote unquote manly, when really it's like, no, your significant other's just strong as fuck, and you're realizing how soft and pathetic you are physically. And then I have to sit them down and have that conversation because they're being an asshole. And at some point their female partner has, broken down to me that they're under this stress. They've had this pressure from home, or they're pumped because they're seeing these gains and this progress in the gym, and then some asshole in their life who you would expect to be supporting them is like, oh, you're too bulky, or too this, too that. It's like, no, they've been putting in a fuck ton of work, and they're seeing the gains from that. So then I have to tell them, like, this is life. This is what happens. Why are you surprised by this? They're putting in more work than you. They're more disciplined than you. They're harder worker, and yes, they're stronger. They're faster. Like, this is human physiology. We can all get to this next level. So I guess my question for you is, have you encountered, and you kind of touched on it a little bit, with your your position as the market strategist for the farm. Have you gotten any of these comments, or is any of this in the farming world that you've experienced?
I mean, maybe I live in a bubble or something.
We all
or
do.
maybe I've created this space where I feel, maybe I was born this way, but I don't.
I feel like we're on a commercial right now.
Yes. Here's my problem. I don't pay attention to that as much. So when it does happen, it's usually I brush it off because I just don't hold on to those things. And so even if someone is slighting me, which I know people have, it's less of like incidences and more of the bigger picture. And I touched on this with me staying home with my children. And then that those babies basically, were my work. And that is not validated as much. People don't see it as a real, an amazing thing that women are doing, staying and giving up their lives to make these beautiful humans so that they're healthy and whole. And so I think it's part of the bigger picture of me. When I say I was in high school and I'm going to my guidance counselor, I'm saying, I want to go to this school. It's called Northland College. It sounds really awesome, and I want to go have these outdoor adventures, and I want to learn everything there is to know about the plants and animals in the outside. And I want to go kayaking, and I want to, and he's like, well, nobody's ever been to that school from here, because I went to a college prep high school in the suburbs of a very expensive place in the suburbs of Chicago. And a lot of the people there were going to be lawyers and doctors, and there wasn't necessarily my space, all those people. But then I was like, well, when I take my ACTs or my SATs and I'm filling out those little squares, and it's like, what do you want to do with your life? And you're supposed to fill out, which, there's nothing for farming. Mm-hmm. I mean, if it is, people are like, why are you circling that? I see you circled forestry. What does that mean? And I'm like, well, that's the closest thing to what I really want to do with my life is, to be outside. So I think this plays a role in all these things where people are minorities right now, especially. It feels like what a powerful time for people to be affecting change in any ways they can, whether you are, whatever industry or whatever place you are in your world, and you're not the majority, you're not a white male. Now is your time to make those steps and to find your allies and to maybe make some headway there. So, your question is kind of like, there's all these little nuances. I couldn't say I went to Fleet Farm and, I couldn't find any clothes that fit me that were work clothes because they're all like, sweatshirts and jogging things. And like, there's not like women's work clothes there that actually fit you. Maybe in Stevens Point, but in Wapaka, the women's section is very small, and it's all for like people who are nurses. There's a lot of scrubs there. It's not actually like farming clothes. Yeah. So that's part of this bigger story. And I think I'm working on it a little bit at a time with my children and with everybody I talk to, like, this is what it's like for me. It's not necessarily like anybody has ever said, you can't do that. It's just all those little things from the point where you're 18 and you want to do something with your life to the point where you're raising children, and then you're trying to have a business, and there's just all these little things that are kind of like, how do I do it? How do I break those barriers? Or, I'm not going to wear a white pantsuit to anything that I do, but, would be nice to find some Carhartts that weren't like, that were big enough to fit me and my woman parts, but not too long, So like, because all the carts, if you want to get a woman size, then they're going to be for this woman who's thin and tall. Uh-huh. So anyway.
Fair enough.
You get what I'm saying.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
It's the embedded patriarchy, and we can just say it right there. It's in everything we do, and we're working on it.
When I go shopping, when my partner and I, Marissa, go shopping, I'm just always in awe of like how not functional most women clothing is. Like, she's gotten to the point where she just shops in the dudes section for a lot of it, because it's like everything from like the pocket size. Like, what can you put in there? Absolutely nothing.
Your cell phone fits in maybe halfway.
Yeah. So
I'm actually wearing pants right now that have pockets in the front and the back.
Oh,
which is even more rare.
Yeah, normally it's there, but it's stitched.
Yep, so they're fake. I know. Yep.
No, that's awesome. So that kind of, I think we're feeding right into it as, talking about parenthood, your children, kind of this legacy or this culture you want to create for them, not only by your words, because you even said that earlier, our language is so important. And I try to be super aware of that in the gym, in the little bubble I live in for fitness is so many things through. Like I have some clients that growing up, they did not have female sports, like Title IX. That whole thing didn't exist. To me, that's crazy. Like their version of sport was it Woman in Leisure or something like that was the name of the class, and it was just like badminton or like just like because these things that we were creating, that the false narrative that this is what sport was for a woman because they couldn't do it. So you have these conversations with them and your mind is blown. Like, holy shit, that's what it was like. And then I look at today, and a lot of the words for stuff, you can see where it comes from. I've had female interns from the university, talk about girl push-ups, quote unquote girl push-ups, and it's like, no, we have, 20 moms in here that can deadlift over 200 pounds, and you're telling me a good term for a modified push-up is a girl push-up, or throwing like a girl. Any of these terms that have kind of been used over the last 40, 50 years because it came from an environment, what you're talking about, even women's clothing, pants, and the way everything is kind of fitted. And you have these conversations with people from different generations, and then you look at the words we're using today and how important they are, and kind of, what you were talking about, from someone that's in their teens to having children, all of these things that get told to us every day. We have these goals, these aspirations, but we're constantly bombarded with this verbiage that just limits us and puts us down. So not only are we battling the obstacles from our own goals, but all of this other shit that's kind of being thrown at us. So for yourself, as a business owner, as a leader, what are you super conscious of in your leadership role as a parent, as a business owner?
Well, one thing that I have learned, I'll say this, is that nobody is going to promote you as good as you are going to promote yourself. You're not going to wait for someone else to come along and say, let me make you the star of the show and help you sell all of your stuff. So, because I think I had this imaginary idea in my mind that we were going to come to a pack and we were going to set up this beautiful stand of vegetables, and people were going to love us, and people were going to be like, oh, this is amazing. And yeah, a lot of people did, but there was no one there managing a farmer's market. There was no one there who was in charge of telling everybody what day the farmer's market was and putting pictures on Facebook. And it was just the vendors managing themselves. And I kind of thought that we would just slide in there and then it would just happen. But no, it turns out, all those things, marketing things I talked about, those were things that I realized that I had to do after a short time. But I think people should think about that too. Like, nobody is going to, help you necessarily. And maybe that's not the right way to say it, but it's true. Nobody's going to do it for you. Nobody's going to say, hold your hand. If you really want to do something, if you want to be a farmer, go do it. I mean, I could imagine if I had finished college and instead of going off and doing whatever I was doing, I went to Wapaka and started finding farmers to work for, or anywhere in the country. I decided that it would be better to just go with my boyfriend then / would-be soon fiance and then husband. I said, well, I'll just go to Pittsburgh and then we can sort of create our life there, rather than me taking that time. This isn't necessarily regret, but this is maybe some advice to some young people who say, well, I'm just going to do what everybody is doing because that's what I should probably do if everybody is doing it. Like, go to college, get a degree, go get a job, find a spouse, get a house, have some kids, do your own, maybe go and do that thing. Go get that internship in Hawaii, or go live in a little shack on Lake Superior for the summer and do some tourist work and then just enjoy yourself. Like, so women, find a friend or something if you're not totally confident, but find someone to go have these adventures with, or you can find people, on the internet. You can make friends that way. I found that's a great way to make connections and learn and go visit places and things like that. But I think that's some advice that I'd like to do. So promote yourself. And don't be afraid to be confident and talk about yourself, even though people are going to think you're a little bit conceited. Just do it, and don't worry about those people. And take advantage of opportunities as they come. And maybe that other part of your life that you're thinking that you're supposed to be doing, maybe that'll just come later if you let it happen. So I never thought I would meet my spouse in college and we would just be like together forever and have kids and do that whole thing. I never pictured myself as that person. I thought I was going to be going off to Yellowstone, becoming some kind of a ranger and doing all this amazing, wonderful stuff out in the wilderness and things like that. So things don't always turn out the way you are expecting them, but they can still be great.
I can totally picture you fighting a grizzly bear. That's all. As soon as you said a ranger, I was like, I can see that.
Yeah, I bet a lot of my friends would say that too. I have a little bit too much of that spunk.
You just got like this confidence of someone that could go wrestle with a grizzly bear. Like, I don't have that confidence. You have that. Like, I can just sense it. You got this energy.
The adrenaline would kick in, and you would be fine. I know it. Everybody would be fine. I've heard stories. You posted that story about this man who saved his family from a bear or something like that. He just did it.
Yep, fights the wolves.
It was awesome. The wolves. It was wolves. Yes.
So, going back to, we touched on it way ago before we run out of time about. So I met you at the Wapaka Farmers Market. That was delicious lamb in gyros, by the way. I love gyro meat. It's so good. But you were out, like, I think I got a cucumber. Otherwise, you were out of veggies. And really good, nice flowers. So, yes, thank you for those flowers, Marissa. Love them. But your daughter was selling baked goods for a trip to Japan.
Yes.
So
this tiny little town, Wapaka, maybe 25 years ago, someone's made an arrangement. They had a relationship with someone in Japan. Like, someone from Wapaka went there, met people, and then there's these sister city things that are just all over the place. Any city can have a sister city anywhere. You just develop this relationship. So Stevens Point has sister cities in Japan. They have one in Japan, and Stevens Point has one in Russia. I think they have multiple sister cities. So Wapaka has a sister city arrangement, and it's a club that meets once a month and sends students ages 12 to 16 to Japan. They pay for half of your ticket, so you have to come up with half of your ticket. When you're there, you stay with families, and that's one of the requirements is when the families come here, they stay with your family. So we hosted 2 people this summer. That's a requisite for sending your student next summer. So we can't send a student to Japan without already hosting someone at your house. So it's basically like showing them some food, cooking, culture.
Got plenty of that.
Check. They come from a farming community. Of course, there's a lot of variety in the students that come over in where they come from too. They're not all coming from farming. Some of them are coming from wealthy families too. So, but we do things all together. They go see the foundry. We do projects and visit things, and they go shopping together. And so we do kind of spend some of our time together. And we sent them tubing on the Crystal River. We put them all in tubes and sent them down there. They thought that was the best. They loved that. But so this agreement, a small town like Wapaka has all these amazing things. And one of the amazing things has the sister city arrangement. So now I can send my student by raising money at the farmers market. She's been helping us raise that money by baking things and selling her own art. She's selling handmade cards, with all this, her beautiful hand lettering and paintings of clouds and things like that. So people are buying them just because they're beautiful, not because they're going to actually send this card to anybody. But she's taken this idea of selling. I think she's seen us sell. She sees the power of money. She's 15 years old now. She understands how this works. You make something, you grow something, someone will come and buy it. And then you get money. And this is commerce, and this is capitalism in a way, but this is how the world works. And I love it. I know, because the other two then are also, the wheels are turning. They're 10 and 11 now. Wheels are turning. What am I going to sell when I get to be a little older? Maybe I'm going to do that. My oldest is she's an amazing kid. She really loves beautiful things. And I think she's a little bit, her tastes are a little bit more refined than her mom and dad's. And I think I'm really looking forward to seeing her travel the world after this. Japan is just her first step. So I think after that, then she's, the Spanish club is probably going to go to Portugal or go to Peru or something like that, or Argentina. And then then there's the Rotary, exchange. So all these things, like Wapaka seems like a small town, but it has all these amazing opportunities for this global view to be developed in students, and all these experiences that you can have that are not just like what you would say like small town, like go to school, farm, go to the bar, like what is there to do in a small town? But actually, so like our decision to come to Wapaka was not just taken lightly. We didn't know necessarily all these amazing things that Wapaka had to offer, but we did know that there was an amazing library there. And we did know that it had a main street that actually had businesses that were operating. So it had, and then we did know that it was just the right size, not too big, not too small. We did know that it had a lot of wild spaces around it that we could have those wild experiences that we want to do, So it really is this complete package that we talked about, my husband and I talked about in college. Like, we want to go have this life, but really what we want is this small town that's not too small. I don't want it to be like 500 people. That's a little bit too small. Maybe it wouldn't have all the things. But not really big. Like, I come to Stevens Point and I'm like, I'm lost here, all these one-way streets, and everything's like it's too much. So I don't know. I love that. I love that piece where I feel like I've made a lot of really good choices for my kids, and I've made a lot of good choices for myself. Choosing an amazing partner who is very loving and tender and intelligent and funny and accepting and supportive. All those things you would always hope to have in a partner. And we've been married for 20 years, which to me is also kind of weird. No, that's a really long time. But, all those choices you make, they're going to come together somehow to create your life, whatever it is. So I would say, my advice would be just make some good choices and maybe you'll get there. I don't know. Decide to go somewhere, decide to have an adventure, and maybe it will turn out totally different. So
I like it. That's solid. Well, we are just around an hour. So I want to be respectful of your time. How can people reach you? How can they contact you? What's the best way if they want to get in touch with Gravel Road Farm?
Yeah. Gravel Road Farm is on Facebook. We have a really well-used Facebook page. I curate all my own stuff there. I don't share stuff. I don't take other people's pictures. All that stuff is mine, stuff that I'm writing and saying and things like that. Maybe a recipe or two I might share. But so that's a really great way. You can always message us there. We have a phone. We have our website that I made using Weebly. But I made that all myself. I wrote all of that, and you can find our contact information there. And we do sell wool on our website. So if you want to buy wool, you can buy wool from our sheep. We didn't even talk about our sheep.
No, we didn't.
We talk about all these vegetables.
All the vegetables.
So amazing. Oh, you can see pictures of our sheep on our website. They're so beautiful. They're just the most beautiful sheep ever. They're just, people come to our farm, and of course I say, well, let's go see this. And they go in with the sheep, and then the sheep are kind of tame, but not too tame, we're not bothering you. But it's just people just fall in love with them right away because of the way they look and the way they act. They're really, really lovely animals. I'm really proud of that part too.
And they taste
about the
good.
Sheep. Yeah, eventually. Yeah, we run out of lamb usually by the end of the season. And then we butcher things again in January, February to be ready for the farm season. So hopefully the next time that people in Stevens Point can find us is going to be at the local food fair. Nice. That's in February. We have been doing that for a couple of years, and we really love that. That has been an amazing way to meet customers and things. And we often will have a little bit more produce left then because we're not doing a lot of markets. So all of our stored produce that we store like cabbages and winter squash. We'll have that for then, whereas a lot of other farmers might be out by then. We have done the Stevens Point Winners Market, but we won't be doing that this year. We're trying to market some winter CSA boxes, so like a CSA box that has winter stuff in it.
Yeah.
So delivered to an indoor location that you could go pick up, like from 4 to 6. I haven't solidified all the details because I'm waiting to finish up the end of our harvest and see what we have before I can say this is what we have. We have this really big order that we do in the fall with Farm Shed. They have this local food tastes great fundraiser. Have you heard of it?
Nope.
Well, we're in there and we sell squash.
I just bought a bunch of stuff out of there.
We sell squash and root vegetables and onions and things like that in there. So that's a huge order. That's like thousands of pounds of food all delivered on one day, which is amazing for us. So we don't just stand there at the market selling it, slinging it one at a time. It's like all at once. Our school participates at the school that our children attend, the school that I work at, participates in that. And our school is made of a lot of farmers already and a lot of people who appreciate that kind of stuff. So we do buy a lot. Our school does really well for that fundraiser. It's great. Yeah. So once that's done, it feels like you can maybe find us at the Waupaca Farmers Market for the rest of the month, but I don't know. Like this Saturday does not look very good. It looks like snowing and 35 degrees does not look like good farmers market weather. So it might end up, but you never know. You might have a warm weekend at the end of October. Still can have stuff to sell then. A lot of farmers are still like in the thick of it. Like this is like prime pepper weather. A lot of sweet peppers and hot peppers are still ready. We have a lot of red and green pepper still on the plants out there. So, anyway.
Cool. I love it. Well, thanks for coming on, Brigid. And do you have any other? So you got the Tomorrow River Charter School, big farm shed fundraiser, potentially a winter CSA share. More details coming soon. The Waupaca Farmers Market. Stay tuned on Facebook. Is there any other big events you have coming up that you can think of?
No, I don't. But, we have a lot of really great little farmers in Waupaca. There's this one farm. We just went to a farm-to-table dinner on Saturday, and they're buying a lot of our produce and having little dinners. So and the Green Fountain Inn is this little place, and the Iron Grill in Iola, they buy thousands of dollars worth of produce from us all summer long. Amazing chef Brandon there is such a great supporter of our farm. CPS does buy some of our produce, so you might, even if you don't actually know it, you might be eating some of our produce. You never know. But yeah, and the Farmer Tribute Dinner is going to come up. That's on November 12th, so they always have tickets for that too. You know what that is, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that's another place. And I work at that charter school there. That's my job during the school year. So if people are interested in that too, they can send me a message about that school too. And that's in Amherst Junction, outside of Amherst there. It's a beautiful little public charter school. Anyone can go there. Anyway, got to plug that a little bit too.
There you do. It's a great school. I might have caused a little bit of a stink at the gym the other day talking about it because there were a couple retired traditional teachers in there, so I got all excited about it, and I even told them, I'm like, no offense, but then talking, purely anecdotal, but talking with the kids that have gone there at the gym, they usually have a much more interesting day that they're willing to talk about than the kid that goes to a traditional school. So just a little plug for that school, but I do appreciate the hell out of all teachers because it's a difficult job regardless of where you're teaching, so I appreciate them.
I do too. I love all those teachers there at that school. They're not just teachers of my students, but they're my coworkers and everything. They're always very supportive and interested in the farm too, and I love it.
Awesome. All right, Brigid. Well, thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. I mean, this is an amazing process, collecting all these farmers, all these other people. I mean, all this work that you're doing. Nobody else is doing it, and you're doing the exact thing that I would hope people would do, is promote farmers, And here I was talking about how you got to promote yourself. Nobody's going to do it, but here you're doing it. Like one of the only people I've met who is going out of their way to promote farmers just out of their own interest and whatnot. So greatly appreciated. I know a lot of people probably appreciate it. They just haven't said it yet.
Well, thank you. I'm a big fan of food and how you're doing it. So, yeah. All right. Later.